They say New York never sleeps, but that night, I would have given anything for my mind to shut down. Who knew that being able to hear a dog's actual thoughts would get me tangled up with billionaires, champagne parties, and one very irritating bodyguard who looked like he'd been carved from stone and programmed never to smile. I didn't ask for this life. I was just the weird kid who heard whispers when I brushed against a cat's fur or felt waves of sorrow from a horse's eyes. By the time I was 26, word had spread among Manhattan's upper crust. If your poodle suddenly refused truffle oil or your prized racehorse kept refusing the track, call Elliot Hayes, pet psychic to the elite. Ridiculous? Maybe, but people paid. Oh, they paid handsomely. That's how I ended up in a glittering penthouse one cold March evening, kneeling beside a snow-white Pomeranian who was more spoiled than half the celebrities I'd seen in tabloids. I stroked her silky coat, murmuring soft reassurances while the owner, a socialite draped in diamonds, hovered nervously. She says she doesn't like the new chef's cooking, I said finally, feeling the wave of disdain rolling off the tiny creature like perfume. The woman gasped as if I'd handed her divine truth. I knew it, she declared. I forced a smile. Another day, another paycheck. But then I felt the weight of eyes on me. In the corner of the room, near the tall glass windows overlooking Manhattan's midnight glow, stood a man who didn't belong in the glitz. Dark suit, crisp white shirt, no nonsense. His shoulders were squared like a fortress, his face unreadable, carved with sharp lines that might have been handsome if not for the permanent scowl. His eyes, though God help May's eyes, were intense, dark, and fixed entirely on me. I looked away, heat prickling at my ears. I didn't need to be psychic to know what he was thinking. Fraud, conman, circus act. That was the first time I met Marcus Hale. 2 weeks later, he was standing outside my brownstone door. Elliot Hayes? His voice was low, gravelly, professional. I blinked at him. Depends. Who's asking? Because if this is about the time I accidentally set off Mrs. Calloway's alarm system trying to feed her cat, I swear he didn't laugh. He didn't even twitch. I've been assigned to you. To me. You're under my protection. Effective immediately. I gawked. Excuse me? I don't recall signing up for a babysitter. Bodyguard, he corrected, cool as steel. I stared harder. Up close, he was taller than I remembered, at least 6'3", built like the wall of a fortress. His jaw was square, his expression disciplined. The kind of man you'd trust in a crisis or hate to be locked in a room with. And that's when he dropped the bomb. You've received threats. I laughed. Threats? From who? Angry cats? Jealous parakeets? Marcus didn't even blink. From very real people. Your work has put you in circles where enemies lurk. Some think you're a fraud. Others think you know too much. My stomach sank. It wasn't the first time someone had called me a fraud. But too much? I'd never thought of myself as dangerous. I talked to pets. That was all. Look, I muttered, trying to brush past him. I don't need some ex-Navy SEAL follow-me-around type. I can handle myself. His hand shot out, steady but firm, blocking my path. No, you can't. And just like that, my quiet, carefully contained life cracked wide open. The days that followed were unbearable. He was everywhere. Walking 2 steps behind me to appointments, standing silent as statues while I murmured to prize-winning greyhounds, even sitting stiffly across from me in cafes when I tried to steal a moment of normalcy. The worst part? The longer he stayed, the more I noticed things I shouldn't have. The way his hands clenched when someone approached me too quickly. The faint scar cutting across his eyebrow. The way his eyes softened just a fraction when he thought I wasn't looking. And the very, very worst part? My heart reacted. Like a damn traitor. I didn't want this. I didn't need this. Falling for someone like Marcus Hale, untouchable, immovable, most likely straight as the bullets he carried, was a recipe for heartbreak. But fate had other plans. It happened one night after a gala. I'd been called to a billionaire's estate to communicate with their polo horse. The ballroom was buzzing with laughter, crystal glasses clinking, people dripping wealth like it was cologne. I felt out of place, as always. Marcus was at my side, silent, vigilant. I crouched near the horse, feeling the deep ache of loneliness that throbbed from the poor creature's spirit. I whispered, soothed, promised the owner what he already knew. The animal needed companionship, not more trophies. As the guests dispersed, Marcus and I walked through the manicured gardens under the sharp glitter of city lights. "You don't belong in their world," he said suddenly. I frowned. "Thanks for the pep talk." "I mean it." His tone softened, just barely. "They see you as entertainment. But you actually care." I stopped walking, stunned. It was the first time he'd said anything personal. I searched his face, half hoping for more. His eyes caught mine, and for the briefest moment, I swore I saw something raw flicker there, something unguarded, something that terrified me more than any threat could. Before I could speak, a shadow moved at the edge of the garden, the crack of a branch, a glint of metal. "Down!" Marcus roared, shoving me hard against the marble balustrade as a bullet whistled past. Marcus's weight slammed me against the cold marble. His arm braced against my chest like a steel bar. My breath caught, not only from the shock of gunfire but from how close he was. His face inches from mine, his eyes burning with fury and something else I couldn't name. "Stay down," he hissed. I froze, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out the laughter still echoing faintly from the gala inside. Another bullet whined past, shattering the ornate garden lantern above us. Shards of glass rained down, glittering like deadly confetti. Marcus drew his gun with a smooth, practiced motion and scanned the shadows. Every nerve in his body was alert, every muscle coiled like a spring. He looked like a man born for danger. Me? I was shaking like a leaf. I wanted to crawl under the nearest hedge and disappear, but Marcus's hand stayed firmly on me, pinning me in place as if I was safer under his watch than anywhere else. The world shrank to the sound of his breath, the scent of his cologne clean, sharp, a hint of cedar. Then, just as suddenly, silence. The shooter was gone. Marcus waited a full minute before lowering his weapon, his gaze sweeping every corner of the garden with cold calculation. Finally, he holstered the gun and turned to me. "Are you hurt?" I blinked. "No, just terrified." His jaw clenched, the faint scar on his eyebrow pulling tight. "Good. Stay that way. Fear keeps you alive." I wanted to snap back, to tell him that was the worst comfort speech I'd ever heard, but the words stuck in my throat. Because under the hard edge of his voice, I could see it. The panic he tried to bury. The relief that I was standing here, breathing. And that did something to me. Something dangerous. The next morning, he was angrier than ever. "You should have canceled all your appointments," Marcus barked as he shadowed me to yet another client's mansion. "And what?" I shot back. "Hide in my apartment until whoever it is gets bored?" "My clients won't wait, Marcus. They're paying me for something no one else can do." His glare could have cut glass. "They're paying you to be a circus act, and you're risking your life for it." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. "You don't get it. Talking to animals. It's the only time I don't feel like a freak. The only time I feel like maybe I'm here for a reason." Something flickered in his eyes, but he looked away quickly, jaw tightening. "Your life is worth more than their applause." The air between us crackled with unspoken things, with anger that wasn't really anger. And I hated him for it. Hated him for caring. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the gunshot, the way Marcus had thrown himself between me and danger without hesitation. The memory of his hand gripping me, protective and unyielding, sent a strange ache through my chest. I didn't want to think about him, but I did. Every damn second. Days blurred into each other. My life, once quiet and predictable, was now a battlefield of tension. Marcus never left my side. At first, I hated the constant presence, the way he followed me into clients' homes, the way his eyes scanned every face at the cafes I visited. But slowly, something shifted. I began to notice small details. How he never let me walk on the street side of the sidewalk. How he positioned himself in every room so he always had a clear view of doors and windows. How, late at night, when he thought I was asleep, his face softened, stripped of its hard lines, revealing a loneliness that mirrored my own. One evening, after a particularly grueling session with a grieving widow and her old golden retriever, I found him waiting by the door. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that made my heart stumble. "You okay?" he asked quietly. For once, I didn't deflect. "Not really. Sometimes. Hearing what animals feel, their grief, their confusion, it's heavy." He nodded like he understood. And for the first time, I wondered what weights he carried silently, what ghosts haunted him in the dark. The threats didn't stop. Notes slipped under my door. Unmarked cars parked too long near my building. A chilling message scrawled across my apartment window one morning. "Fraud. Expose him or else." I tried to laugh it off, but Marcus didn't. One night, he paced my apartment like a caged wolf, his movements sharp, controlled rage simmering beneath. "This isn't random," he muttered. "Someone with resources wants you gone. This isn't just about money, it's personal." The idea made my stomach twist. Who could possibly hate me enough to want me dead? I talked to cats and comforted dogs. I wasn't a threat to anyone. Unless I'd uncovered something in those whispered confessions. Something an animal had seen. Something its owner desperately wanted buried. The thought sent a chill crawling down my spine. 2 weeks into Marcus's unrelenting watch, everything finally broke. We were in my kitchen. It was late past midnight. I was sitting on the counter with a mug of lukewarm tea, exhausted, frayed. Marcus leaned against the opposite wall, arms crossed, shadows painting his face in hard lines. "I can't live like this," I snapped suddenly. "Everywhere I go, you're there. Every second, I feel like I'm suffocating." His eyes narrowed. "You think I enjoy this? You think I want to follow you around while you chat with poodles and pampered cats?" The words cut deeper than I expected. My chest tightened, anger and hurt spilling over. "Then why do it? Why stay if you hate it so much?" Silence. His jaw worked, his fists clenched at his sides. Finally, he spoke low and rough. "Because I'd rather suffocate watching you breathe than watch you die because I wasn't there." The words hit me like a punch. The room seemed to shrink, the air too thick. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And then, before I could think better of it, I whispered, "Marcus." He stepped closer. Slowly, like a man fighting every instinct to turn away. His hand lifted, hovered, then dropped to my side, brushing against my fingers. It was nothing, barely a touch, but it felt like everything. The kiss didn't happen that night. Maybe because we were both too scared. Maybe because crossing that line meant breaking the fragile world we'd built. But the shift was there, undeniable. From then on, every glance lingered a little longer. Every brush of his hand felt loaded with meaning. Every silence was filled with what neither of us dared say. And it terrified me, because if I let myself fall, I wasn't sure I'd survive the crash. The next blow came swift and cruel. A phone call at dawn. A voice on the other end, cold and mocking. "Tell your psychic to stop snooping, or next time we won't miss." Marcus's expression was grim as he hung up. "They know where you live. We're moving." I stared at him. "Moving? Where?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't reach you." Panic clawed at me. "I can't just disappear, Marcus. I have clients. A life." His hand gripped my shoulder, firm, grounding. "You'll have nothing if you're dead." The raw fear in his voice silenced me. For the first time, I saw past the bodyguard, past the stone exterior, into the man beneath. He wasn't just doing a job. This was personal. Too personal. That night, as he drove us out of the city, the silence between us was heavier than any words. Streetlights streaked across his face, carving him into someone almost unreal, half warrior, half ghost. I wanted to ask him everything. Who he was before this. Why he cared so much. Why he looked at me sometimes like I was the only thing holding him together. But I didn't, because the answers scared me more than the questions. The safe house was a cabin in the Catskills, tucked deep in the woods. Quiet, isolated, too quiet. The first night I couldn't sleep. I paced the creaking floorboards until Marcus finally muttered, You're going to wear a hole in the floor. I stopped, glaring. Sorry for not being calm after someone tried to kill me. His lips twitched. God help me, almost a smile. Fair. And then, against all odds, we both laughed. It broke something in the tension, let air rush back into the room. I collapsed onto the worn sofa, exhausted. He sat across from me, watching with eyes that felt like they saw too much. The silence stretched, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was intimate. For the first time, I wondered if just maybe being trapped here with Marcus wasn't the worst thing that could happen. The cabin in the Catskills was too quiet. I'd spent my life surrounded by noise-barking dogs, whiny cats, the hum of Manhattan traffic, the clinking of champagne glasses in high-rise apartments. But here, the silence pressed against me like a weight. Every creak of the wooden beams, every rustle of leaves outside sounded magnified, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Marcus, of course, seemed perfectly at home. He moved through the cabin with his usual precise efficiency, checking locks, drawing curtains, setting his gun within arm's reach on the nightstand. Watching him was like watching a machine wound too tight, calculated, unbreakable, untouchable. And then there was me, curled up on the sagging sofa with a blanket and a restless mind that wouldn't shut up. I told myself it was just the stress, the fear of whoever wanted me dead. But deep down, I knew the real problem, Marcus Hale. He was everywhere in this cabin. His presence filled every corner, every silence, every damn breath I took. On the second night, I couldn't stand it anymore. I wandered into the small kitchen, found Marcus at the counter nursing a mug of black coffee. His dark eyes flicked to me, then back to the steam rising from his cup. "You don't sleep much, do you?" I asked, leaning on the doorframe. His answer was as flat as always. "Not when I'm protecting someone." I swallowed, nerves buzzing. "So it's the job." He finally looked at me, and there was something in his eyes that made my chest ache. "It's more than the job." The words hung there, suspended between us like fragile glass. I didn't know what to say, so I poured myself some water and tried to act normal. My hands shook anyway. Days passed. The forest grew colder. We settled into a strange rhythm, talking to the handful of stray animals that wandered near the cabin. Marcus running drills in the clearing like a man trying to outrun ghosts. Sometimes I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. Not the hard, assessing stare of a bodyguard, but something softer, something that made heat coil low in my stomach. And sometimes I let myself watch him too. The way his muscles moved under his shirt as he chopped wood. The concentration etched into his face when he cleaned his weapon. The rare flicker of vulnerability when he let his guard slip for half a second. I hated it. I hated that I wanted more. One evening, the forest was alive with crickets. I sat on the porch steps, a stray cat purring in my lap, while Marcus leaned against the railing nearby. "She says you're too serious," I teased, stroking the cat's fur. Marcus arched a brow. "The cat. She doesn't understand why you never smile." He gave me a look that could have curdled milk. But then God help Mayus' lips curved. Just barely. The smallest, quickest flicker of a smile before he masked it again. My heart betrayed me with a stutter. "Better?" he muttered. I laughed, the sound too loud in the quiet night. "Yeah, better." The cat purred louder, as if in approval. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Marcus's voice outside. Low, urgent, clipped. I crept to the window and saw him on the porch, phone pressed to his ear. "No, we're not coming back," he said. "It's not secure." They knew his exact schedule. That doesn't happen without inside information. A pause. His shoulders tightened. "I don't care what the client says. He stays alive, that's my job. Tell them to shove their demands." He stopped suddenly, as if aware I was listening. I ducked back from the window, heart hammering. Inside information. Someone close to my world wanted me dead. The thought twisted in my gut, bile rising. Which client? Which billionaire's pet had whispered something I wasn't supposed to hear? When Marcus came back inside, his face was shuttered. "Everything's fine," he said. Liar. That night, the storm broke. Rain hammered the roof, wind howling through the trees like an animal in pain. The power flickered once, twice, then died. The cabin sank into darkness. I found Marcus by the window, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. His silhouette was carved by lightning, tense, alert. "Storm," he muttered, but his tone said more, "danger." I moved closer, instinct dragging me toward him. My hand brushed his arm just a fraction, just enough to feel the solid heat of him. He didn't pull away. "Do you ever get scared?" I asked suddenly, my voice barely a whisper against the storm. For a long time, he didn't answer. Then, every damn day, the honesty cracked something inside me. Before I could think, before I could stop myself, I reached up and pressed my lips to his. It wasn't like the movies. There was no sweeping music, no dramatic lightning strike timed to perfection. Just the storm raging around us, my trembling hands clutching his shirt, and the shock of his mouth against mine, warm, firm, hesitant. For one heartbeat he was still, and then he kissed me back. It was rough, desperate, as if he'd been holding it in for too long. His hand cupped the back of my head, pulling me closer, anchoring me against the storm. I melted into him, every nerve on fire, every wall I'd built crumbling. When we finally broke apart, breathless, his forehead rested against mine. "This is a mistake," he whispered. "Then why does it feel like the only thing that's real?" I whispered back, his eyes closed, pained. "Because it is." After that night, everything changed. We tried to pretend nothing had happened, but the air between us was charged, alive. Every glance lingered, every touch burned, every silence screamed with what we'd shared. I caught him watching me in the mornings, when sunlight spilled through the cabin windows. I caught myself reaching for him in the dark, just to know he was there. And when nightmares woke me, visions of bullets, of faceless threat, she was always there, pulling me against his chest, holding me until the shaking stopped. Neither of us said the word love, but it was there, unspoken, undeniable. And that terrified us both. The attack came at dawn. I was feeding the stray cat on the porch when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A black SUV rolled up the dirt road, too quiet, too deliberate. Marcus was beside me in an instant, gun drawn. "Inside. Now." My heart lurched. "Marcus, go!" His voice was sharp, commanding. The soldier in him came alive, all traces of the man I'd kissed swallowed by instinct. I stumbled inside, but I couldn't leave him. I hovered by the door, watching through the crack as 3 men stepped out of the SUV, armed, moving with military precision. "Hayes!" one of them shouted. "Come out, and maybe we'll let your guard dog live." Marcus's jaw tightened. He fired a warning shot into the air. "You picked the wrong house." And then chaos exploded. Gunfire ripped through the morning. Windows shattered, wood splintered. Marcus moved like lightning, taking cover, returning fire with deadly accuracy. I crouched behind the sofa, heart slamming, useless, powerless. But then through the haze of fear I felt it. The cat. Her panic hit me like a wave. She darted across the porch, straight into the line of fire. Without thinking, I bolted from cover, scooping her into my arms. A bullet whizzed past my ear. "Elliot!" Marcus roared, furious. I stumbled back inside, clutching the trembling animal, my whole body shaking. Marcus fought like a man possessed, but they were too many. For every one he drove back, another pushed forward. And then I saw it. One of the men circling wide, aiming for Marcus's blind spot. "Marcus!" I screamed. He turned, too late. The gun fired. The shot split the morning air, sharper than thunder. My scream tore out of me before I even knew what happened. Marcus staggered, his shoulder jerking back as the bullet tore through him. For a terrifying second, I thought I was watching him fall forever, but then he planted his feet, teeth bared, and fired back with brutal precision. The attacker went down. I dropped the cat, rushing to him, my hands already slick with blood as I pressed against the wound. "No, no, no. You're not leaving me, Marcus. Not like this." His jaw clenched, eyes blazing with fury and pain. "Focus," he rasped. "We're not done yet." The fight wasn't over. Two more men advanced on the cabin, relentless. Marcus shifted his weight against me, refusing to collapse, and aimed again. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. But somehow, I stayed with him, my hands steadying his, my voice whispering words I didn't know I had. "I've got you. You're not alone. Not anymore." And for the first time, I felt him trust mere ally trust me. The rest was a blur. Sirens cut through the chaos distant at first, then closer, closer. Whoever had betrayed me hadn't counted on local law enforcement already circling suspicious activity in the area. The surviving attackers fled into the trees, leaving Marcus bleeding, me trembling, the cabin shattered around us. I cradled him on the porch steps as the first police cars skidded up the dirt road. His head leaned against mine, his breath hot and ragged. "You idiot," I whispered, tears burning. "You could have died." His lips curved into the faintest, most painful smile. "Worth it." Hospitals smell like antiseptic and despair. I sat in the stiff plastic chair beside Marcus's bed, his hand heavy in mine, refusing to let go. Tubes, machines, doctor sit all blurred into white noise. He was alive. That was all that mattered. When he finally stirred, his voice was gravel and exhaustion. "Still here. Always," I whispered. His eyes softened, and for once, there was no wall between us. No mask. Just a man who had bled for me, who had broken every rule to protect me. And may a man who had spent his life talking to animals, finally realizing he had found someone who listened without words. The investigation unraveled quickly after that. The shooters had been hired by one of my wealthiest clients, a man desperate to silence me after I overheard something through his prize-winning hounds, something about financial fraud, criminal ties, dirty secrets that even his own lawyers couldn't bury. They thought I was a fraud, until I wasn't, until I became dangerous. The irony wasn't lost on me. My gift, once a joke to the world, had nearly cost me my life. But it had also given me Marcus. When he was finally released, bandaged but alive, I brought him back to my brownstone. The city was loud, chaotic, alive again, but I wasn't the same person who had left. Neither was he. We moved slower now, more careful, more honest. Sometimes we argued, God, did we argue? About risk, about trust, about how many cups of coffee one man could drink in a day. But the arguments always ended the same, with silence heavy enough to crush us, until one of us broke, closing the distance, finding the other in a kiss that tasted like surrender and survival all at once. One evening, weeks later, we sat on my fire escape watching the city lights flicker like stars. A stray dog I'd been helping dozed at my feet. Marcus leaned back, his arm brushing mine, his gaze softer than I'd ever seen it. "You scare me," he admitted suddenly. I blinked. "Me? Why?" "Because you make me want things I shouldn't want. Things I thought I'd lost the right to want a long time ago." My chest tightened. "Like what?" He turned then, eyes dark and unguarded. "Like a life. Like you." For once, I didn't try to joke, didn't deflect. I just leaned in and kissed him, slow and steady, with every piece of myself I'd been too afraid to give. Love didn't fix everything. The world was still cruel. People still whispered about fraud. Danger still lurked in shadows. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Marcus wasn't just my bodyguard anymore. He was my anchor, my storm, my impossible. And me? I was no longer just a psychic for pampered pets. I was someone who had found the courage to listen not just to animals, but to my own heart. One night, as we lay tangled together in the quiet after laughter, Marcus's voice rumbled against my skin. "Still think I'm too serious?" I smiled into his shoulder. "Only when you forget to smile." His arms tightened around me. "Then I guess I'll just have to keep smiling. For you." And for once in my life, I believed in happy endings. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.